the ways in which it feels different to have been bereaved by somebody taking their own life, and the way in which it does seem to bring still now stigma and taboo and shame. And there's always a conspiracy of silence around somebody dying. There's always people that, you know, don't know what to say, and their fear over not knowing what to say means they completely ignore you, which is even worse. I mean, there are still 17 countries in the world where suicide is illegal, where you can be prosecuted for attempting it. So that's going to shut people down even more and make them feel even more embarrassed about both talking about that they might have suicidal ideation, but also then the people who are left behind feel that they can't talk about it, and then the people that want to help don't know how. What have you guys found is both helpful and not helpful in how people talk to you about it afterwards? Are there words that are more jarring, more comforting? Tara, what have you found in your research?
I mean, I think I personally, I realized, you know, I don't think I realized how much silencing. So one of the things that really sort of I found incredibly difficult was how frightened that everybody else around me was that I would do what my brother had done. And it was like, and I was very scared of that myself, because I didn't understand. I thought, is this going to happen to me too? You know, like, and so it was this, but their fear fueled my own fear. And then I didn't feel that I was able to express this huge depth of emotion and complex emotions that were going on inside me, because then they would be afraid, and then they would think I was going to do what my brother did. And then, so I think for me, the what I needed, but I didn't feel I had, was just someone that could open up a space for me, a safe space to just howl and scream and engage in the depth of emotion that was going on inside me. And I didn't feel that I had that space. So I think if there had been somebody there that had just said, given me that space, that non-judgmental space to say, how is it for you? You know, can you try to explain what's going on for you, and just to hold that space without. And I think that's a lot about, you know, our own fears and being able to hold our own fears about that. And because of the stigma around suicide, that makes it very, very difficult for people to do. And I think that's one of the really complex things about suicide, is that it's this really difficult mix of a kind of grief and loss-based response combined with a kind of shame-based response, which is kind of internalizing, and then also a fear-based response. And so those responses are all kind of antagonistic against each other, you know, and that is so difficult for somebody hearing that experience to kind of maintain a sense of peace, to be with, to hold that safe space. And then obviously for the person, for me, who experiencing it, to try and understand that. But yeah, I don't know, that's what I felt I really needed.
If we're not honest, then we just perpetuate the shame and the stigma. And I imagine, talking about sort of choosing words carefully, but also being honest within that. And Kat, I imagine that at Papyrus, you can't. You're talking with people who are idealizing suicide, who want to do it, and so you can't mince your words. You have to be brutally upfront, as we do as therapists. If somebody comes to us with that, we have to say, what are your plans? You know, how realistic is? How are you going to do it? Is that something that Papyrus has to kind of really confront head on? That brutal honesty.
Yes. Brutal doesn't quite feel like the right word. I think perhaps, yeah, a kind honesty, or, you know, it's about really, I think, offering that non-judgmental, open, you know, listening ear and space. But when you need to kind of lean in and ask if somebody has a plan, and that, you know, is one of the things that we often shy away from, because we think we're going to put the idea in someone's head, but we're not going to do that. We're going to give them a space to talk about it, and that space doesn't exist in society, in life. And particularly with young people, often the stigma is coming from parents or teachers, or, you know, it's about working also with communities so that doesn't exist in the space. So it's as much about listening to the young people as having this kind honesty with those around them as well. I also just wanted to touch on your earlier question about what do you do, and I think one of the things I have found has brought me the most peace is just accepting that there may be no words. I can see a lot of comments in the chat about finding that language, and I have taken great peace in accepting that may always be the case. And I spend a lot of time now just from taking the film, you know, God, I meet a lot of people, and even last weekend doing an event in Oxford and meeting parents who very recently lost their son, and we've texted, and she said that she hasn't been able to speak yet, but just meeting someone else who knows what that grief is, you're able to exist in the silence together. And I really would encourage everyone to, if you can, seek out people who understand what that kind of grief looks like, and they don't need to try and make you feel better. There's something about that understanding of what it is that I think brings a great deal of peace, and which somehow is quite, it does propel you forward somehow. Yeah,
really important. And going back to sort of what both John and Kat have said about that questioning, and you know, and what you said, Sasha, about, you know, we know that people who have been bereaved by suicide are at greater risk of suicide, but I think allowing people to explore that question in a safe environment is really important, because it does come up, as it did for me, and I didn't feel able to, I didn't understand what that meant for me, you know, but I was just scared. It was just frightened me that I even thought of it. But had I had support to explore that questioning without the fear attached to it, that it was normal. You know, we know that when someone takes their own life, for some people, it then does become an option as a way to end their pain and to resolve the problems faced by them. And I think if we allow people to explore that, and then explore other options and ways to solve their problems that don't involve ending their life, then that's an incredibly powerful way to, well, prevent suicide, but also to support people through that healing journey, to then make meaning from their experiences in a way that enables them, one, to live, but also to grow from those experiences, rather than to potentially make meaning from those experiences by way of thinking that they might be able to solve their problems by taking their own life. And I think that's where suicide postvention, being the way that we support people who are bereaved by suicide, is such an important part of suicide prevention. And really that's what my research kind of really contributes to that conversation.